Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, I want to share with you 10 true stories about some of the most terrifying haunted houses, each one unfolding on Halloween night when the line between the living and the forgotten grows thin. Out there, lights flicker for no reason, and they say that if someone knocks after midnight, you should never answer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and let me know where you're listening from, because one of these stories might have started not far from where you are. Thank you for being here. Now then, let's begin. I used to photograph old houses in the Appalachians. Not for money, not even for recognition, just for the stillness in them, the way a place held its breath after being abandoned. But there was one house that made me put my camera down for good. I don't think cameras can capture souls. At least, I didn't used to think that. Now, I keep mine locked in a case at the back of the closet. Lens cap on. Batteries out. That night, Halloween 3 years ago, changed everything. We had heard about it through a mix of rumor and internet breadcrumbs. A house at the end of a forest road near a forgotten town. One that only shows up on Halloween night. Local forums said it was an optical illusion or a leftover prank from some art collective. But there were just enough consistent details to hook us. It was me, Myra, and Jenna. Myra was a friend from college who had gotten into travel vlogging. All soft light filters and echoey music. Jenna was newer. He ran her second camera and helped with sound. I came along mostly for the house, for the chance to shoot something real. We parked where the dirt road disappeared into trees. Jenna checked the drone battery while Myra adjusted her scarf. All business, under her puffy jacket. I remember she looked up once and asked, "Do you smell that?" I hadn't. Not yet. The house didn't appear suddenly. It was just there, when we rounded a bend. 2 stories. Sagging porch. Those narrow Appalachian eaves I always liked. But what stopped us cold was the flicker of a dim orange light from the upper balcony. An old oil lamp. Still burning. It should have felt fake. But the light danced like real flame, and the air carried a strange, sharp scent. Something chemical and bitter. Like darkroom fluid, long turned sour. Myra whispered, "Someone's living here. In the sink use." We should have turned around. That much is obvious now. But curiosity has a way of making ghosts out of warnings. I lifted my camera and took the first shot. From the porch, the house felt hollow. The boards creaked under our weight, but there was no sound beyond that. No wildlife. No wind. Just the subtle pop of the lamp's wick and the hiss of old air shifting. Inside, it smelled worse. Like something sealed tight for too long had just been cracked open. The walls were stained from time, but there was no graffiti. No sign of squatters. Just rows of faded photographs nailed directly to the wood. We started taking pictures. Myra did a slow pan with her vlog camera while Jenna lit the hallway with a flashlight. I used my flash. Always did in houses like this. But the preview screen kept showing something wrong. Each photo had a dark smear running through it. Not a blur. Not a lens flare. A heavy shadow across half the frame. Like someone had leaned in just before the shutter clicked. Myra thought it was one of us. But every time it happened, we had been standing in front of the lens. Jenna shrugged it off. "Old houses play tricks," he said, even though I saw the uncertainty in his eyes. We moved into the main room, where the ceiling sagged and a thick layer of dust clung to the floor like snow. On one wall, dozens of photographs hung in uneven lines. All the same woman, posed in different rooms of what looked like this very house. In each one, she was standing in a doorway, wearing a long white dress. Her face had been scratched out in every photo. That's when I started to feel it. The tension, the wrongness. It sat in the back of my throat like static, just waiting. Then Jenna's flashlight flickered, blinked off, then back on again. And when it came back, one of the picture frames was swinging, still nailed to the wall, but moving side to side. No breeze. No one had touched it. Myra's voice dropped. "Guys, do you hear that?" In the separate, a sound from above. Slow, dragging steps across the floorboards upstairs. Not just footsteps, but something heavier. Something that shifted its weight unevenly. I raised my camera without thinking and aimed it at the stairwell. Flash, a blink of white light, a shadow at the top of the stairs. The next second, I see it. It moves, bent at the waist, limbs long and wrong. A figure, twisted, like something halfway melted. Its face jerks toward us, and I swear I hear the sound of a shudder, not from my camera, but from its direction. We run, out the room, onto the porch. The front door slams shut behind us like a trap springing. My camera slips from my hand and hits the floor, the flash going off again and again as it bounces. In each burst of light, the thing comes closer. Its movements stutter, too fast between still frames, like watching a stop-motion nightmare. The sound, that clicking sound, echoes through the porch like an old film reel. I don't remember who screamed, just the feel of Myra yanking the door open, the three of us tumbling down the steps. Jenna loses a shoe. We don't go back for it. We leave the car behind and run the 2 miles back to town without stopping once. We didn't speak on the run back, just breath and footsteps and the occasional scrape of Jenna's bare heel against gravel. By the time we reached the edge of town, our legs were shaking and my throat burned from the cold night air. My camera was still back there, inside that house. The next day, I went back alone, not because I was brave or stupid, but because I had to know, had to see if it was real. The car was still parked off the road, untouched, but the house, it was gone. No porch, no flickering lamp, just trees and leaves and a clearing that looked like it had been empty for years. I thought I was going crazy until I found the camera, lying exactly where it had fallen, half buried in dirt. The lens was cracked, but the memory card survived. I didn't look at the photos right away. I waited until I got back to my studio, locked the door, and loaded them onto my old desktop. For the first 20 shots, it was the same, that creeping smear of shadow, that partial blur. But then came the flash frames from the porch, one after another, staccato shots of movement and light, and in one of them, clear as day, a figure behind me, a woman in a long white dress, face stretched and bent like melting wax. I froze. The hair on my neck rose before my brain caught up. My hand hovered over the keyboard, and I kept telling myself it had to be Myra, or Lynn, or some kind of double exposure. But the timestamp said otherwise. She hadn't been in the shot before. She hadn't been in any of them. Only that one frame, her behind me, standing perfectly still while I looked the other way. I showed the photo to the guy who ran the local film development shop. He used to be a photojournalist, before the town dried up. When he saw it, his face lost color. "You don't know who that is?" he asked. I told him no, and he pulled out a box from behind the counter. Inside were old newspapers, brittle and yellowed. He flipped through until he found one from October 1963. A woman had lived in that house, a photographer, known for eerie self-portraits taken with long exposures. She had been reclusive, rarely seen in town, and one Halloween night, she had set fire to her own studio with herself inside. Her name was never found in the town registry. The fire department said the darkroom chemicals had reacted with something volatile, made it burn hotter than they'd expected. No body was recovered. The photo I had matched one in the article. Not exactly, but close enough. The dress, the posture, the same warped hint of a face. The photo from my camera had been taken in the same spot as the old newspaper photo. The lamp from the balcony was right behind her. I stopped taking pictures after that. The studio still has the camera. I never touched it again. Myra and Jenna went on to other shoots, other trips, but none of us ever mentioned that night out loud. It just settled inside us, like dust you can't wipe off. But there's something else. Every year, on October 31st, right around midnight, I hear it outside my apartment door. 3 clicks, spaced out exactly like a camera flash. No one's ever there when I open it. Just the porch light swaying slightly, even on windless nights. I moved twice, changed cities, but the sound follows. And the photo, that one final shot, it stays in its frame, tucked away in the back of the closet. Some nights I can feel it looking out at me, even through the wall. And each time, I remember the way her face was never meant to be seen. The shutter sound is always the same. 1, 2, 3. Halloween nights were usually quiet. By 9, most porch lights were off, and parents had herded their sugar-high kids back inside. That night was colder than usual. I remember how the frost clung to the mirrors and made the GPS screen look fogged from the inside. I was finishing my last route in Boone County, just skirting the Appalachian line. One more package before I could head home and crack open something cold. The address popped up right as I turned off the main road. No house number, just a pin dropped at the end of a dirt lane that cut into the forest. My tires kicked up dry leaves as I crawled down that path. There were a few old houses along the way, wooden cabins with sagging porches and dim orange lights barely pushing through the windows. Then came the last one, set back from the others, almost swallowed by the tree line. Name's Raymond. I've been running late-night deliveries in this county for close to 7 years. Seen my share of weird, sure, but never anything like that night. If I'd had half a brain, I would have left the box at the end of the drive and walked away. But I didn't. The porch steps groaned under my boots. Not the usual squeak, but a deep, tired sound like the wood was trying to speak. There was no doorbell, just a faint smear where one used to be. The windows had thick curtains, and I swear one of them moved, just slightly, like a slow breath behind fabric. I crouched to snap a photo of the package at the door. Standard protocol. My hand hovered over the camera icon. That was when I heard it. The sound of a latch clicking open from the other side of the door. The door cracked an inch, just enough for something to breathe through. A smell slipped out that made my stomach tighten. Not rot exactly. More like overcooked meat left under plastic. I straightened up, took a step back. And then it came. Tall. Too tall. Shoulders scraped the top of the frame, and the way it stepped out was all wrong. Like it had practiced walking but still hadn't figured it out. Its arms hung low, and one hand reached toward me. The fingers were too long, bending at the wrong joints. The nails scraped the wood beside the doorway, slow and deliberate, as if it liked the sound. Its head tilted as it stepped fully into the light. I remember the face most, or the lack of one. It looked like someone had tried to sculpt a face but gave up halfway. The surface was smooth in some places, melted in others, like plastic left too close to a flame, half folded, half stretched. No eyes, no nose, but somehow I knew it was staring straight at me. I took a step back. My boots caught on the edge of the wooden porch, and I stumbled down into the dirt. The box landed beside me, split open. I reached for my phone, tried to lift it and take a photo, maybe even shine the flashlight. The thing moved. Not fast, not aggressive, just forward. One step, slow and silent. It tilted its head again, and its fingers twitched, still reaching. It made no sound, no breath, just the creak of wood behind it. I backed up farther and slipped into the ditch that ran along the edge of the road. My foot hit a rock, and the pain shot up my leg. The phone flew from my hand and landed screen down, hard enough to crack. It steps down the porch. The ground shifts slightly under its weight. The head turns one way, then the other, as if testing which direction to follow. It bends lower, not in a crouch, but like it is folding, trying to meet me at eye level. I freeze. For a second, it is just inches away. I can smell that same burnt plastic scent, feel the cold where it should have been warm. Then I push off the ground and run. I do not think. I just run. Into the woods, through thorn and brush, not caring which direction. The branches catch at my arms. My jacket rips, and I nearly trip 3 times. But I do not stop. I do not look back. By the time I reach the gravel road again, I cannot hear anything behind me. No footsteps, no snapping branches, just the wind through the trees and my own breath, harsh and ragged. I drove straight home, left the other packages in the truck, spent the night with the lights on and the blinds shut. I told myself it had to be a costume, some sick Halloween joke, a prank on delivery drivers. But I knew better. The next morning, I returned with a county officer I knew from high school. Told him I dropped something the night before and needed help finding it. He was the kind of guy who had heard too many wild stories to be easily impressed. He raised a brow, but he came with me anyway. We followed the GPS pin. Same route, same dirt path. But when we reached the end, there was nothing there. No house, no porch, no broken box or cracked phone. Just a patch of soft earth and dead trees. Like something had once stood there a long time ago. The officer said the area had burned back in the 90s. Some family cabin went up in a freak accident. No one had rebuilt since. I didn't say anything. Just stood there, looking at the space where the house had been. A week later, I got another delivery request. Same street name, same pin on the map, same note on the app, leave at front door. No need to knock. That was the last time I drove nights. Now I stick to day shifts. Familiar roads, lots of traffic, nowhere, too quiet. But every year, as Halloween rolls around, I check the system, and without fail, that address shows up again. I never accept it. Not anymore. Because some nights, when I pull into my driveway, I swear I catch the smell of burnt plastic. And once, just once, I found a box on my own porch. No label, no return address, just a faint handprint melted into the top. Before we step into the next story, if you're still here, still listening, with the lights low, maybe drop a comment. Just tell me where you're listening from. It helps more than you know. All right, let's keep going. I never believed in ghosts, but I do believe some rooms never want to be forgotten. That is the only way I know how to explain what happened in my grandmother's house. It had been almost a year since she passed, and I had finally worked up the energy to come back and sort through her things. The house sat on the edge of a quiet stretch of forest, just past a town most maps don't bother naming. Rain was falling in slow, soft threads that evening, tapping on the metal roof like fingertips on glass. I parked out front and unlocked the door using the key I still kept on the same ring as my apartment fob. Inside, everything was exactly how she had left it. Doilies on the tables, old china stacked behind a glass cabinet, and the scent of dried lavender still faint in the air. It was both comforting and hollow. My name is Carla. I had taken a few months off work after burning out hard in the middle of a corporate contract no one will ever remember. Coming back to Grandma's place felt like hitting pause. A way to slow my breath without anyone expecting a reply. I didn't plan to stay more than a night. I plugged in my phone near the hallway outlet. The old light above the corridor flickered once. Then again. On the third flicker, it gave up completely. I sighed, shook my head, and remembered something Grandma used to say when I was little. Never go up to the attic after dark. They sulfur. I used to think she meant it, metaphorically, like some kind of old folks superstition meant to keep kids from climbing and falling. But standing there with the hallway light dead and the rain steady overhead, it felt more like a rule, a warning pressed into memory. I started organizing papers in the dining room, then moved some old boxes to the corner. That was when I noticed the tall wardrobe near the stairs had shifted slightly, or maybe it had always been angled like that. Behind it, there was a narrow wooden panel with a small handle near the top. I don't remember ever seeing that door. It was old, rough, painted the same pale yellow as the hallway. I touched the handle and felt a puff of cold air leak out around the edges. Curiosity won. I pulled it open and saw a narrow stairway leading upward, dusty and steep. I should have waited until morning, but something about the silence upstairs called to me. I turned on my phone's flashlight and started climbing. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, but nothing shifted or broke. At the top was another door, lighter wood. No knob, just a flat push panel. I pressed it open and stepped into a room I swear had never been part of the house. It was small, square, and completely lined with mirrors. Dozens of them. Some leaned against the walls. Others were bolted into place. They varied in shape and age, from ornate oval frames to plain squares with clouded edges. The flashlight beam bounced wildly in all directions. My face stared back at me from every angle, fractured and stretched. Dust coated the floor in an even layer, untouched, undisturbed. I had the distinct feeling that if I turned around, the door might not be there anymore. I stood in the center and raised my hand, waving slightly. Most of the mirrors followed my movement perfectly, but a few were slower, just by half a second. Then, one of them lagged further, not by accident, but like something behind the glass had noticed me and was pretending to be me. I took a step toward it. So did the reflection, but I felt certain it wasn't mine anymore. I stepped closer to the largest mirror near the far wall. The glass was so clouded that my reflection looked like a shadow painted onto fog. I reached out with my sleeve and wiped the surface. Slow circles, clearing a small patch of silver. My reflection didn't move. For a long moment, I thought it was a trick of light. Then the figure in the glass began to breathe. The fog on the surface shifted outward in rhythm with her chest. Not mine. I froze where I stood. The reflection lifted its head. Her hair was wet. Strands clung to her cheeks. Water dripping down her collarbone, though the room was perfectly dry. She wore a pale dress that looked older than any piece of clothing still in the house. I felt something drip onto my own shoulder. But when I touched it, my fingers came back clean. The sound began then. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like droplets falling onto wood. I spun around, scanning the floor, but there was nothing. The mirrors behind me shivered faintly, the light from my phone flickering as if struggling to stay alive. I turned back to the glass. The woman had moved closer. Her face hung low, half hidden by her hair. She was standing just behind me in the reflection, but when I glanced over my shoulder, no one was there. The air felt heavy, pressing against my ribs. My own reflection now stood still while hers swayed slightly side to side. Every mirror in the room began to echo that motion, the shimmer of glass pulsing like breath. The tapping grew louder. I whispered, "Grandma." Dimes of fens. No answer. Only the soft drip of water that wasn't there. My phone light flickered again, and for a heartbeat, every reflection stared directly at me. Dozens of wet faces, eyes hollow, heads tilted in perfect sync. I took a step back, heart pounding in my throat. Then she moved. Her head snapped up. Her mouth opened in silence. The mirrors vibrate. The air ripples. And my body refuses to move. I can feel her behind me now, her breath cold against the back of my neck. I break free. The flashlight slips from my hand, landing face up on the floor. Spinning, the beam flashes across the mirrors, and for a split second every reflection fractures. Glass screams as 100 surfaces shatter at once. I lunge for the door, grab the handle, and pull. The noise stops. The air settles instantly. Too still. Too quiet. I stand there with my hand on the frame, chest heaving. I step through and close the door behind me, holding it shut for a moment before daring to look back. The door is gone. Where the frame should have been, there is only an unbroken wall of wood, smooth and untouched. No seams, no hinges, not even a shadow line. My flashlight beam trembles against it before fading. A week later, I returned with the realtor. She was a practical woman, clipboard in hand, tapping numbers into her phone. When I mentioned the attic, she gave me a puzzled look. "There is no attic," she said. "This house only has 2 floors. Is it world?" I didn't argue. I just nodded, pretending I'd made a mistake. I've avoided mirrors ever since. The bathroom one is covered with a towel. My phone camera is taped over. Yet sometimes, when I wake at night and glance toward the darkened window, I see a faint shimmer. It looks like a reflection standing behind me. Wet hair, pale dress, waiting. And though I never open my eyes fully, I always hear the same slow sound. Drip, drip, drip. I never believed a house could think. Walls are walls. Bricks don't plan. But something about that place made my girlfriend forget which way the door was. We were 2 weeks into a road trip through the Appalachians. Just me and Jess, taking time away from work and the world. The idea was to unplug. No tight schedule. No expectations. That afternoon, the sky turned black faster than either of us expected. The kind of storm that sneaks up behind the trees and feels too quiet before it breaks. Wind kicked up dust on the road, and Jess's phone lost service. Mine was already dead. I switched to an offline map app I had used once or twice before. That was when it appeared. A small structure marked just off the road. No name, no rating. Just a gray dot labeled Storm Shelter, 2PH, former ranger post. Jess leaned over and squinted. "That's not on the other maps," she said. But we were already slowing down. It wasn't much. Wood siding gone soft at the edges. A porch with sagging boards and a door that creaked when the wind blew wrong. But the roof looked solid, and we didn't have many choices. Inside was strangely clean. No dust. No smell of mildew. The kind of clean that feels like someone just stepped out of the room. Jess sniffed once and said, "It smells like tea, like the kind my grandma used to make." "There one of you men." I turned on a small lamp near the wall. It worked. The light had a yellow cast, like something from an old movie. We sat in what looked like a living room, furnished with a sagging couch, a small CRT television, and a ticking wall clock that read 11:47. I flipped the TV on just to see what would happen. Static. But the sound coming out wasn't noise. It was some kind of music. Soft. Warbly. Like a vinyl loop played too slow. We thought it was kind of charming. Honestly. A weird little place in the woods with a working lamp and working TV. Jess curled up next to me. Outside, the rain came down like nails. About 30 minutes in, I got up to grab some water from what looked like a tiny kitchen space. The cabinets were bare, but the sink worked. That was when I saw the photo. Framed on the wall beside the pantry. A faded picture of a couple standing out front of the same house. Same porch. Same collapsed rail. Same crooked lamp on the left. But the part that chilled me, it was us. Same jackets. Same posture. Same weird expression Jess had made earlier when the wind picked up. I stared. My heart thumped hard against my ribs. I called her over, but when she walked in, the frame was empty. Still there, but no photo, just a sheet of dust-colored paper behind glass. Jess raised a brow. "You okay?" "In with place. We need to go," I said. She didn't argue. We grabbed our bags, opened the front door, and stepped back into the same living room. The air was the same. Same warm bulb light. Same hum from the old television, still looping its warped tune. Jess looked at me and asked, "Did we close the door behind us?" "They were we do in the safe. In the metal wing." I opened it again. Stepped out this time. Porch boards creaked underfoot. But instead of the gravel driveway or the woods beyond, I saw the sagging couch. The same corner of the rug curled up. My water bottle still lying on the armrest. We tried the back door next. Then every window. No matter where we exited, we re-entered the same room. Jess started to pace. Her steps echoed louder than they should have. I checked my phone. Still dead. Jess's had come back with 1 bar of battery but no signal. The time, 11:47. It had not moved. We climbed the stairs together, hoping to find another door, another way out. But as soon as we reached the landing, I turned around. The stairs were gone. Just a wall now, wooden and flat, like the floor had never led anywhere. Jess whispered, "We've been here before. Isn't it different south?" "What do you mean?" I asked. She touched the railing. Her fingers shook. "I think I've been here before." "I see." We found a bedroom upstairs. Plain walls. A dresser with all the drawers empty. Inside, one of them, I found a small notebook, pages yellowed and torn at the corners. The handwriting looked familiar. It was Jess's. Dates filled the first few lines, not today's date, but days before. Weeks even. Each page had short notes. "Still raining. Still here. TV never stops." Then the words that made my stomach twist. "He doesn't know yet. Do not tell him. Not yet." I kept flipping. 11:47 is the lock. He will try to run. I need to stay calm. The house lets you out when someone stays. I looked up. Jess stood near the door. Silent. "Jess, what is this?" "That's tooting good." She didn't answer right away. Then she gave me a tired smile. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "It makes sense." Her voice cracked just a little, like she had said it before. I remember something shifting in that moment, like the air had gone still, watching us. I wanted to grab her, shake her, get a real answer. But the fear in her eyes was not of me. It was of the truth. I grabbed the wall clock off the nail and threw it across the room. It shattered. The ticking stopped. And for the first time since we entered, the silence felt real. The wall behind the broken clock faded. Not instantly, but like fog lifting. A faint outline of a doorway appeared. I took Jess's hand, and we stepped through. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was gray, cold, light, stretching over trees slick with water. I checked my phone. Full battery. No missed calls. The date had changed. October 31st. We made it back to town by evening. She barely said a word. A week later, her number stopped working. I heard from her once. A voicemail with no message. Just the faint sound of a clock ticking. Then silence. Now, every Halloween at 11:47 p.m., my phone screen freezes for exactly 1 minute. No signal. No sound. Just the faint, impossible echo of music from a place I should never have entered. And somewhere out there, Jess still knows how it ends. I still dream about that hallway. It stretches longer each time, the walls peeling like old bark, the light too dim to name a color. I take a few steps, then turn around. But it never ends. We had rented the house for Halloween, just a group of old friends trying to recapture a little spark from college. I used to coordinate big events for a living, so I took charge of finding the place. I thought it would be funny, a retro-themed party in a Victorian-style house, all vintage drinks and candlelight. The listing was vague but promising. Spacious Victorian home with wide halls, ideal for gatherings. It had that filtered, washed-out look in the photos that people either ignore or find charming. When we arrived, there was no host, just a brass key tied to the door handle with a little note, "Do not open the basement door." I remember laughing about it. We all did. You don't leave a message like that if you actually want someone to obey it. I pocketed the key, and we stepped inside. The air inside the house felt thick, not dirty, just old. Dust clung to the baseboards, and the wallpaper had been peeled back in strips, like someone had started redecorating and never finished. But the hallway caught my attention right away. It ran behind the staircase, past the kitchen, too long for a house this size. Wooden floor, tall walls covered in faded floral paper, and no windows. Just a line of closed doors on either side, and a single mirror at the end, leaning slightly off balance. We spent the first hour setting up decorations and testing the sound system. Someone set out plastic cauldrons for snacks. I arranged orange bulbs along the stair railing. Every now and then, I'd glance at the hallway and feel like the lighting had changed, even though no one had touched a switch. Rachel, one of the friends I hadn't seen in years, walked past me with a plate of cookies and said, "Hey, was that hallway that long earlier?" She didn't wait for an answer, just disappeared into the kitchen, but I'd been thinking the same thing. I told myself it was the angle. You see something straight on and it feels longer. It made sense, at least at the time. We all stayed on the first floor, drinking and laughing, and for a while it felt like just another night with old friends. Later, I went looking for an outlet for the fog machine and remembered there were a few sockets in the basement. I hadn't planned to open that door, but it was a practical thing. I found it near the back of the kitchen, half hidden behind a curtain of drying herbs. The key fit easily. The stairs down were narrow, steep, and slick with cold. The basement smelled like cement and copper. I found the outlet, plugged in the machine's cord, and turned to go back up. That's when I noticed something was off. The door I'd come through was no longer behind me. Instead, there was another narrow hallway, wooden, dim, lined with closed doors. I turned back, thinking I'd made a wrong turn. But there was no staircase, no sign of the concrete walls I had walked past earlier. I don't remember panicking right away. It was more like confusion, a kind of heavy pause in my chest. I told myself I'd walked too far in one direction and just needed to retrace my steps. But no matter how many doors I passed, I never found the basement again. The oddest part was how quiet everything got. Upstairs, I had heard music, chatter, the low hum of voices. Down here, it was nothing but the creak of my own shoes and the soft crackle of the wallpaper under my fingertips. I started knocking on doors, lightly, at first. Every door opened the same way. A small room, empty, always with a single dusty window, but every window showed the same thing. The hallway I was standing in, and in some of them, I could see myself. Not directly, but like a reflection off a surface just slightly too late to react. I'd turn toward one of the windows and see the edge of my coat disappear from view. I started to sweat. That was when I noticed the mirror. It was still at the end of the hallway, leaning just slightly, the way it had been upstairs. But now it hummed, not with light or vibration, with sound, a faint echo, like something murmuring my name through water. I took a step back. The floor groaned louder than it should have. Then the lights flicker. Just once, then again. And when they come back, the basement door is right there in front of me. Only now it is closed, and on the inside of it is a sign I hadn't seen before. Do not open the basement door. I reached for the doorknob, but my hand stopped an inch short. Something felt wrong, like the metal would burn or vanish if I touched it. I backed away, turned, and followed the hallway again. It didn't lead anywhere. I started calling out, "Rachel, Tom, anybody." My voice echoed back, but not from in front of me. It came from behind. I turned, and there was only that same narrow corridor, stretching farther now, like it had inhaled. A flickering light came on above me. That same old bulb from earlier, the one hanging in the original hallway. I recognized the soft yellow glow, and for a moment I felt relief. But when I turned toward it, all I saw was a wall. A brick wall, not old wood, not peeling wallpaper. Solid, cold brick. I pressed my hand to it. It was damp, and the air shifted as if I had disturbed something. Then came the voices. Muffled. Familiar. Myra's laugh. Tom shouting about the drinks. Someone playing music. All of it came through the brick as if there was a party on the other side. My heart jumped, and I pounded on the wall. No answer. Just the same echo, dull and slow. I screamed this time, pressed my ear against the stone. The voices were clearer now, as if they were only inches away. I started to walk again, choosing direction at random. No sense of left or right anymore. I was no longer sure which way I had come from. Doors appeared and vanished, and the floor began to slope gently downward, almost too gradual to notice. Eventually, the air shifted. I turned a corner and saw something strange. A warm light poured from a half-open door, and inside was the living room. The same one from the house. The same party. Myra was sipping wine on the couch. Tom was by the record player. Rachel waved at someone across the room. My hands shook. I stepped forward, but my foot landed on bare concrete. The light vanished. The door swung shut. When I opened it again, there was nothing. Just another narrow room with no windows. No sound. I don't remember how long I walked after that. It could have been hours or minutes. Time folded in on itself. At one point, I sat down against the wall, trying to breathe, counting slowly to 100. When I opened my eyes, I was somewhere else. This time, the hallway led up. A staircase, old and narrow, creaked under each step. At the top, a door stood slightly ajar. Light spilled through, and music hummed softly. I stepped through. Suddenly, I was in the living room. Music was playing. People were laughing. Drinks were half empty on the table. Myra turned and smiled at me like nothing had happened. "There you are," she said. "We were about to take a group photo. You okay?" Jian down. I didn't know what to say. I nodded. My mouth felt dry. I looked around. Everything was just as it had been when I left. No one remembered me being gone. They thought I had gone to the bathroom. Some joked I had snuck away for a nap upstairs. The fog machine was running now. Soft mist drifting across the floor. It smelled like vanilla and plastic, not concrete. I didn't mention the basement. I didn't ask about the hallway. I just smiled and stood still as the camera timer clicked down from 3. But I never felt quite real again after that. For weeks afterward, I flinched whenever I turned a corner in my apartment. I stopped taking elevators if I was alone. Hallways made me dizzy. Even in hotels or office buildings, I found myself counting doors as I passed, just to make sure they didn't repeat. Once, while cleaning the supply closet at my temp job, I opened the back door and froze. Behind the cleaning products and metal shelves was a wooden hallway. Faded wallpaper, closed doors. I shut the door and walked out of the building without clocking out. To this day, I cannot pass through a hallway without glancing behind me every few steps. And sometimes, in dreams, I feel the note brush against my back again. The same message, printed in fading ink. Do not open the basement door. That one hit a little different. If these stories mean something to you, leave a like, subscribe, or share this video with someone who'd stay up to hear it too. And if you've got a true horror story of your own, my email's in the description. Now, story 6. The house belonged to my aunt, the woman who vanished inside her own bedroom and wasn't found for 5 days. I only met her a few times when I was little. She was the kind of relative you heard stories about more than actual news. Quiet, maybe a little strange, but kind. When she passed, she left me the house. No one else wanted it. The lawyer said something about a delayed probate, how she'd been legally missing before they declared her gone. I was given the keys and a thin folder of paperwork, mostly blank. I thought I would sell it, come up for the weekend, take pictures, make a listing, maybe call in a junk crew to clear out the basement. I was 33, living alone, working remote at a job I no longer cared about. This felt like an errand, not a turning point. The house was tucked into a bend of old woods near the northern stretch of the Appalachians. No neighbors. Just a dirt path hidden behind a rusted gate. By the time I found it, the road had disappeared beneath waist-high weeds. I parked outside and approached with low expectations. But when I opened the door, the hallway light was already on. The air didn't smell musty. It smelled like fresh tea and warm dust. In the kitchen, the fridge still hummed. Inside were eggs, butter, and a half loaf of bread, all fresh. The expiration dates were only a few days past. It was like someone had just left and forgotten to lock up. I told myself the town must have sent someone to check on it before I arrived. Maybe a cleaner. Or maybe the power had held longer than expected. But even then, the idea of someone being in the house recently made my skin prickle. I started sorting through drawers in the living room. Most were empty. But behind a stack of old magazines, I found a bundle of letters tied together with string. Not mailed. Not even addressed. Just pages folded and written in the same looping cursive I remembered from childhood birthday cards. The first few were calm, almost mundane. Grocery lists, notes about a neighbor's cat. But as I read deeper, the words became uneven. The lines grew slanted. Some were smudged, water damaged. There's something in the mirrors. Unresser. It only knocks when I forget to speak aloud. The stings and salls. If I sit long enough, I stop feeling alone. That is when it gets dangerous. The Dowling to the Great. I stopped reading. That night, I lay on the old guest bed with my coat still on. The rain had started again, soft and rhythmic. Around 2 in the morning, I woke to a sound. 3 slow knocks. Not at the door, against the wall. Exactly 3. Spaced evenly apart. I held my breath and listened. Nothing else. I waited until morning to check the hallway camera on my phone. I had set it up more out of habit than caution. The footage was grainy, but one thing stood out. At 2:17 a.m., the light in the bedroom flicked on and off. 5 times. No movement in the frame. When I opened that door later, the bedroom looked untouched. One teacup still sat beside the armchair. A thick mirror covered the wall opposite the bed. I stared into it for a long time without stepping inside. I didn't see myself. I blinked once, then leaned forward, thinking it was the light. The reflection came back slowly, as if the glass had to remember how to copy me. But even then, something felt wrong. My face looked pale, my expression too still, my eyes not following mine exactly. I stepped inside the bedroom. The air felt heavier there, scented faintly with old tea and something metallic. The mirror took up almost the entire wall. The teacup on the side table was still half full, steam faintly curling upward as if freshly poured. I whispered her name. Nothing answered, but the silence had a pulse. I turned to leave, hand already on the knob. Then the door shut by itself. The click sounded final. There was no lock on that side, but it would not open. I called out again. Nothing. I tried the window next, but it would not budge either. The air felt colder now, heavy with the scent of wet wood. That was when the sound began. The soft creak of the armchair behind me. A single, slow shift of weight. My stomach tightened. I turned toward the mirror, expecting to see myself standing alone. Instead, the reflection showed a woman sitting in the chair. Her face was turned slightly away, but I could see her gray hair hanging in damp strands. Her hands folded neatly on her lap. She did not move. I took a step back. The floor creaked. The mirror woman smiled. I froze. My pulse beats so hard I can hear it echo. The light flickers once, twice, and in each flash, she sits differently. One blink and her hands are on the armrests. Another blink and her eyes are open, watching me. I press against the wall, trembling. My back hits something sharp. Carved words. Only opens when you remember your name. They 5-1 men. I whisper it aloud. Once. Twice. The room seems to breathe with me. Then the mirror cracks. A hairline fracture spreads across the surface like a vein of lightning. I can see through it, not darkness, but another room behind. The same bed, the same mirror, the same teacup. I move closer, drawn by the faint glow. Through the broken glass, I see myself sitting in the chair, my hair disheveled, my eyes half closed, lips slightly parted. For a long moment, I don't breathe. I realize I have seen this before. The thought feels rehearsed. I reach out and touch the glass. It gives under my fingers, soft like skin. And when I pull my hand back, there's a faint smear of warmth. The woman in the reflection stands up. So do I. She turns toward the bed and disappears behind the veil of cracks. When I blink, the mirror is solid again. I am alone, still facing it, my own pale reflection staring back. The door opens quietly behind me. I step out, shaking, and when I turn to look, the doorway is gone. Just another stretch of wall, smooth and blank. I left the next morning. I did not stay to clean or pack. The lawyer sold the house within a month. But I kept one thing, a folded letter I had found on the nightstand, the last my aunt had written. I never read it all the way through. Each Halloween, I take it out of the drawer and unfold it again. Every year, one more line appears in handwriting that looks more and more like mine. It always ends the same way. If you forget, sit down again. That night, we planned a simple Halloween stream. 30 minutes in a supposedly haunted house. Just enough to spook our followers and grab some clips for the channel. Nothing fancy. Just 3 of us. 1 camera. And a backup mic. The house had been abandoned since the late 90s. After 4 people were found dead in the basement. No cause ever made it to print. We went live at 11:58 p.m. I remember the clock because the comments came in fast. Everyone was already in a Halloween mood. The house sat at the edge of a dead-end road near the Appalachian foothills. 3 stories tall and slouched like it had been exhaling for decades. My name's Lucas. I'm 21. Senior year in media studies. And at the time I was still calling myself a streamer. Jenna handled the camera. Always quiet. Always precise. Zoe was the voice of the show. Quick on her feet. Good at reading chat while sounding natural. The plan was to go floor by floor. Let the viewers vote where we explored next. The stream held steady as we moved through the first floor. Creaky boards, torn wallpaper, and that smell, like mold layered over burnt plastic. Nothing we hadn't seen before. But the chat kept saying one thing over and over. The image glitches every time you walk past a mirror. As act N, we thought it was a joke. Every haunted house gets that kind of spam. But after the 3rd mirror, and the 3rd flicker, I started watching the playback feed on my phone. There was a split second where the frame stuttered, just long enough to catch something that looked like an extra arm behind Jenna. We moved to the 2nd floor. The hallway was lined with old VHS tapes stacked on the floor. No cases, just faded labels with dates scribbled in red. I picked one up. It read, October 30/31, 1998. Underneath, in smaller writing, only watch if no one else is here. We laughed about it on stream. I wish we hadn't. The basement door was already cracked open. That part wasn't planned. We didn't touch it. But Zoe thought it made for a better story. Like it's been waiting, she said. I remember how she smiled when she said it. That smile didn't last long. We headed down together. The stairs were steep and soft at the edges, like they would give way if we stepped wrong. I was in front, Jenna behind me. Zoe held the light and kept the chat talking. Halfway down, Jenna's flashlight slipped. It hit the wall and shattered. The light blinked out. We reached the bottom in near darkness. The camera light stayed on, barely, just enough to make out shapes. Old furniture, a workbench, a rusted water heater. and one table in the center with a handprint smeared across it. Blood, or something like it. We heard the door slam shut above us. I ran back up. It wouldn't open. I tried everything. Shoulder, flashlight, even pulling up the hinges. The door wouldn't budge. Zoe started to panic. Not loud, not screaming. Just the quiet kind of panic, where someone stops blinking and whispers to themselves. Jenna leaned against the wall. I thought she was just catching her breath, until I saw the blood under her nose. A thin line, too dark to be fresh. Then she slumped, not passed out, not limp, just slow, like something was pulling her down from inside. I caught her before she hit the floor. Zoe shined the light around us. That was when chat started flooding again. The comments came fast, all at once, overlapping. There's someone else down there. He was not carded. Why is the camera woman standing up? Nextings of many Juan. Lucas, you're not holding her anymore. Idro. My hands went cold. I checked the stream on my phone. The footage still showed Jenna standing. She was swaying slightly, face turned away from the camera. But I was holding her. She was on the floor. That made no sense. Zoe whispered, "Turn it off. End the stream." Been insane. World, they cries and tinny. I didn't. I should have. But I didn't. We searched for another way out. Behind a rotting cabinet was a thin wooden panel. It cracked when I kicked it. Behind it, a crawl space, barely tall enough to duck through. We dragged Jenna with us, careful not to hit her head. The stream glitched more with every step. We pushed through and reached a second stairwell. Narrower, dust choked. I went first, then Zoe, half carrying Jenna. When we emerged, it was into the kitchen. Clock on the wall said 12:31. That couldn't be right. We had only been down there maybe 10 minutes. 20. Tops. My phone buzzed once. The stream had ended on its own. We got Jenna to the car. She came to slowly. No memory of what happened. Zoe sat in silence the entire ride home. Not a word. I didn't press her. The next day, I reviewed the footage. That was the mistake. The basement section was longer than it should have been. 38 minutes. I played it through, checking the timestamps. And there, near the end, the camera showed all three of us still downstairs. Still walking, still looking, but in real life, we had already left. In the footage, we were moving through darkness with no lights, no talking, just the sound of breath, heavy, unsteady, like someone trying not to cry. At one point, the camera turned and faced me. My face was blank, but my lips moved. I watched closely, replayed it 3 times. I never remembered saying anything like that. But in the video, I leaned forward and whispered something to the lens. And though the audio was nearly gone, I could just barely make it out. They haven't left the basement. ESLN. I stopped streaming after that. The channel's still up, but I haven't touched it in months. The original footage is saved to an old drive. I never deleted it, never watched the end. Each Halloween, I tell myself I'll finish it, watch the last minute, see what my past self was trying to say. But I never do, because every time I open the file, it is longer than the year before. 7 stories down, and just 1 more to go. Thanks for staying with me this far. Really, the last one. It stays with me. Let's begin. Some people think house sitting is the easiest job in the world. I used to think so too, especially when I could work on design commissions during the day and get paid to sleep somewhere quiet at night. But that changed the week I stayed at the Marlowe house. It was an old Victorian place on a cul-de-sac outside of town, surrounded by oaks that scraped the windows when the wind picked up. The owners were an older couple heading to Scotland for a short trip, and they just needed someone to feed their dog, water the ferns, and keep the lights rotated to make the place look lived in. I said yes before I even saw the house in person. The money was too good to turn down. They gave me a tour the day before they left. The dog, a sleepy golden retriever named Cisco, barely raised his head when we walked by. Most of the house was tidy and elegant, with thick rugs, dark wood panels, and glass doorknobs that clicked sharply in your hand. It smelled like cedar and old paper. Right before they left, Mr. Marlowe took me aside and said, "One thing, the cabinet under the stairs. Do not open it." He smiled like it was a joke, but his eyes didn't. "It's not broken or anything. I just don't want anyone messing with it." I nodded, a little confused, and watched their SUV disappear down the hill. For the first day and a half, everything felt fine. Cisco followed me from room to room, snored at my feet while I worked, and barked at squirrels through the front window. I lit candles in the evenings, turned on the porch light, and checked the locks before bed. The first odd thing was the light in the upstairs hallway. I always kept it on the warm white setting, but when I came up to brush my teeth that second night, it had changed to a dull orange hue. I thought maybe I'd bumped the switch by accident, but it happened again the next night. White, then orange, then back to white. Cisco started growling at odd hours. Between 2 and 3 in the morning, like clockwork, he would sit up, stare at the back door, and let out this low sound that made the skin on my neck tighten. I checked every time. The door was locked, the curtain drawn, nothing outside. Still, he wouldn't settle until I turned on all the kitchen lights. On the third morning, I noticed muddy footprints on the stairs. They started near the downstairs bathroom and went up the carpeted steps. Dark, single prints that looked fresh. I hadn't gone outside since I arrived. I always wore socks indoors, and Cisco never made it past the second step. The worst part, every morning, the armchair in the living room had moved. I thought maybe I was remembering it wrong at first, but no, I always left it facing the television. By morning, it would be turned slightly, facing the front door instead, as if waiting for someone. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe Cisco bumped into it. Maybe it was off balance. But something about the angle felt intentional, like someone had sat there all night, listening for footsteps. By the final night, I was exhausted. The lights kept changing. The hallway bulb had started to flicker in steady beats, as if someone was pressing a switch over and over just out of sight. Cisco refused to enter the dining room, where the side windows stayed fogged no matter how warm the house got. At 2:58 a.m., I heard the sound. The back door, the distinct thump and metal click of it closing. I ran to the window. Nothing there. I checked the locks. Still bolted. Cisco whined and backed into the living room, tail tucked. I set up my phone camera on a chair facing the door. I wanted proof, or at least something to make me feel sane. I let it record until dawn. The next morning, when I checked the footage, everything was fine. Until 3 exactly. The screen went black. Not frozen. Just gone. For exactly 24 seconds. That afternoon, I stood in front of the cabinet under the stairs. I had not touched it. I had no reason to. But I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. I reached out and tapped my knuckles lightly against the wood. From the other side, something tapped back. Once. I opened the door. There was nothing inside. Just a coat hook, an old umbrella, and a dusty rain jacket. But the air that rushed out smelled like something had been sitting in there for years. Watching. I shut it, locked it, went to the living room and sat in the armchair, holding Cisco close. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in that chair for hours. Cisco curled up at my feet, ears twitching at every creak in the walls. I left the lights on. The TV too. Anything to make the house feel less quiet, less poised. I didn't want to move, not even to blink too long. Sometime after midnight, the room grew cold. Not the kind that comes from drafts or old insulation. This was a stillness, like the space around me was being drawn inward. Cisco whimpered softly. My arms had gone numb from gripping the blanket too tight. The chair cushion beneath me felt strange, warmer than the rest of the room. I leaned forward slightly and caught a faint smell, like scorched hair and rust. I froze. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Not Cisco's. It came from behind the chair. Deep. Deliberate. As if someone was crouched just inches from the back cushion, their face near the fabric. I did not turn around. I stood up, legs shaking, took 2 slow steps toward the door, and then walked faster. Cisco scrambled after me. We exited without looking back. I locked the door behind us and stood on the sidewalk, barefoot and cold, the key still trembling in my hand. The windows of the house stared back, blank and dark, all except one upstairs, where the hallway light flickered once, then went still. Something moved behind the glass. It did not wave. It did not hide. I called the Marlows the next morning and told them I would not be returning. I didn't say why. They didn't ask. Maybe they already knew. A year later, I drove through that neighborhood on my way to meet a client. I slowed when I passed the house. The grass was longer than I remembered. The shutters had begun to peel. And behind the front window, I saw it. That same armchair, still turned toward the front door. Waiting. I never took another house-sitting job. Never walked into a stranger's home without feeling watched. Even now, in my own apartment, I do not sit with my back to a doorway. I did not see anything that night, but that was exactly why I ran. I never believed in things like forbidden rituals or cursed spaces. I figured most of that came from stories people told to make small towns feel bigger. But that changed the day I had to crawl under a rental house at the edge of the Appalachian forest. The job was straightforward. I was hired to check for leaks in the plumbing under a house that had been sitting empty for a few months. Rain had been heavy that week, and the owner said a strange odor had started seeping up through the vents. My name's Nathan. I do contract work, plumbing, basic electrical, crawl space inspections, nothing fancy, just whatever pays. The place was hard to get to. Dirt road half washed out. No cell signal once I got past the ridge. The house itself was a small one-story with chip siding and a warped porch. No car in the driveway. No neighbors nearby. Just the quiet hum of wind dragging leaves across the yard. The crawl space access was out back, behind the porch. I popped the panel loose, set my flashlight between my teeth, and slid inside. The ground was cold and damp, packed clay mixed with bits of gravel. Nothing unusual at first. Then I found the symbols. They were faint but deliberate. Circles in chalk or ash, maybe both. Smudged in places but still clearly drawn. I saw one beneath a support beam, another near the vent grate. Some had little hanging things above them, bits of twine tied into loops, hooks dangling from the wooden crossbeams. I figured the last tenant had too much time and too little supervision. I took a picture, more out of habit than concern. Then I wiped one of the markings away with the edge of my glove. Needed the space clear to run new pipe anyway. A few minutes later, I started laying the new line, checking the level and fit. That was when I noticed something strange. The way out looked farther than I remembered. I had only crawled in a few yards, but now the panel felt distant. I told myself I was turned around, crawled a little more, but the air was colder, and the light from outside had dimmed. I paused, turned my head behind me. Nothing, but I heard it. A soft click, then another, like something tapping along the wooden underside of the floor above me. I called out once. No echo. The sound stopped. Then, slowly, it started again. The tapping grew louder, closer. Not footsteps exactly, but something dragging and halting, like fingers testing each board above me. My flashlight flickered once. I tapped it. It flickered again. I crawled forward faster now, heart thudding hard against my ribs. The panel should have been 10 feet away, 20 at most. But no matter how far I moved, I didn't get closer to the exit. Then I heard the whispering. Not from outside. From behind. Close. Words I couldn't make out at first. Just a hissing rhythm, barely forming syllables. My ears strained. Then the words took shape. Broke it, not yours, now yours. I spun around. The crawl space behind me had changed. The beams were older, cracked in ways they hadn't been when I came in. The air smelled like wet chalk and something burned. And in the center of that tight, dark space, I saw a circle I hadn't noticed before. New. Drawn in a finer powder, ash or dust. And I was in the middle of it. I dropped the wrench. It hit the ground with a soft thud, muffled somehow. I reached for the edge of the circle. I'm trying to wipe it away, but my glove came back black, like I had touched soot. Then something touched me. A hand. Cold. Not gripping, not pulling, just resting on my ankle. I looked down. The fingers were wrong, too thin, ash-colored, with no nails, like a sculpture made of dust. I kicked hard and scrambled back, dragging myself out of the circle. The hand dissolved, scattered like it had never been whole. The crawl space groaned around me. The air felt thinner. I could barely see the panel now, just a faint square of light. I crawled, fast. My knees slammed against rock. My palms scraped raw. The whispers grew louder, overlapping. Not finished. It stays. One always stays. I burst through the panel just as my flashlight died completely. I did not look back. I packed up without cleaning. Drove until my signal returned. Sent a quick message to the owner saying the job was incomplete and never returned his call. That night, I barely slept. Told myself it had been claustrophobia, that maybe there had been mold or gas messing with my head. But then, 3 nights later, I woke at 3:14 a.m. There was a sound beneath my bed, a soft click. Then, another. My house has a crawl space. It never made noise before. I checked it the next morning. Nothing seemed off, until I looked closely at the vent near the wall. There, in faint white lines, was a symbol I knew. One I had wiped away in that other house. I bought a brighter flashlight, started keeping a saltwater spray by the bed. I never go near the crawl space now. But once a year, on Halloween night, at exactly 3:14, the hatch creaks open on its own. And somewhere beneath the floor, something draws another circle. I used to think of myself as rational, the kind of person who made decisions with both feet on the ground, especially when it came to my job. Teaching in rural districts wasn't glamorous, but it made me feel useful. I liked the quiet, the way seasons move slower out here. But something changed the year I turned 26. That fall, I agreed to stay on as an overnight staff member while the elementary school underwent foundation repairs. Most of the students had been sent home for the break, but a few boarders remained another week, and someone had to keep an eye on the dorm wing. I moved into the old faculty housing behind the gym, a squat, red brick building with iron steps that moaned under every foot. There were 3 apartments in the row. Mine faced the east woods. The middle unit was empty, and the last one was rented by a married couple who both taught 6th grade. We'd wave at each other across the field sometimes, though I never got their names. Most nights I was alone, eating microwave soup and grading math quizzes while the wind moved dry leaves along the pavement like whispers. That Halloween, I put together a little activity for the remaining students. Paper ghosts, a flashlight scavenger hunt in the hallway, and a reading of a mildly spooky story. Nothing too scary. By 9 p.m., they were back in their rooms, and by 10, I was in mine. Lights off. Under the covers, the soft pitter of cold rain threading against the windows. I only ever heard my name 3 times, but that was more than enough. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to a small, rhythmic sound. Light, almost polite. It took me a second to register it was coming from the left window, the one near my desk. I sat up, heart barely stirred, thinking it was just a pine cone falling or maybe a loose screen flapping. When I pulled the curtain aside, nothing was there. Just mist pooling in the grass and the faint orange glow of the gym's security light in the distance. The next morning, I asked the other teachers if they'd noticed anything. They shook their heads, said it was probably just squirrels or a stray branch. I let it go, telling myself the same. But the next night, at exactly the same time, I heard it again. The tapping, then a voice. Small, breathy, a child's whisper. "Miss, open the window." My breath caught. I sat frozen, blanket pulled to my chin. I waited, not sure for what, and after a minute, the voice didn't return. I got up, looked out. The grass below was slick with drizzle. No footprints. Every door along the block was dark. No student had permission to be out after lights out, and certainly none had any reason to come this far in the rain. The next morning, I checked the sign-out sheet. Every single name had been accounted for. I even walked the perimeter with the head custodian, who laughed gently when I told him. That night, I asked the office for the security footage. We pulled up the clip from the timestamp I gave them, 1:03 a.m. The footage showed the side yard and part of my building. At first, nothing, just mist curling along the grass. But then, something odd. A shadow, not large, not small, moving fast, too fast to make sense of. It passed by my window, just once, and then disappeared. But the strange thing was its height. The shadow's top brushed the window frame, nearly 7 feet off the ground. I told myself it was a trick of the camera, a glare, a smudge, anything else. I tried to sleep early that night, but my ears stayed sharp, listening. On the third night, I didn't hear tapping. Instead, it was a scraping, a faint, persistent tick-tick-tick, like nails dragging in a measured rhythm. 17 taps, counted without meaning to. I didn't move, not until the sound stopped. Then I saw it. A patch of breath fogged on the inside of the glass. Not mine. It lingered, perfectly shaped, like someone had leaned in mouth close to the pane, and exhaled. I backed away slowly, grabbed my phone, and called the maintenance line. The custodian arrived 10 minutes later. He checked the outside first, then inside, and finally just gave me a long, tired look. "You know," he said, shining his flashlight along the frame. "This building was something else before it got turned into housing. He's wise, and his wives have to work." I asked him what he meant. "Used to be a detention unit. Temporary. During the war, heard some of the old records went missing. Prisoners too. Went right off the books." He smiled a little, like he was trying to lighten the mood. "Probably just the wind. That we Spain," but he didn't explain the fog on the inside of the glass. And neither could I. Under daylight, everything felt ordinary again. I spent the morning cleaning, opening the windows to let in air, forcing myself to think about anything but the night before. By afternoon, the couple in the next building waved as they drove off to visit family for the weekend, leaving my side of the complex empty. I told myself that was good. That quiet would help me rest. For a while, it did. The nights that followed were uneventful. The rain stopped, the fog lifted, and I began to believe that whatever had happened was only the residue of exhaustion and imagination. By the end of the week, the sounds were gone, and I even slept with the curtains open again. When the semester ended, I packed my things and moved to a new assignment in a different county. The new school was larger, brighter, full of noise and chatter. I felt almost normal again, as though the incident had been sealed off with the old dormitory. I even stopped thinking about that date altogether until the following autumn. I should have known better than to trust the silence. It never lasts long for me. That year, I went home for Halloween, back to my parents' house, several hundred miles away. It was the first time in months that I had slept in my childhood room, the one with the narrow window facing the maple tree. My mother made stew. My father stayed up watching late television, and everything felt safe in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Just before bed, I noticed the old clock on my desk was still working. It blinked 12:54 a.m. As I slipped under the blanket, the window glass reflected a faint shimmer from the streetlight outside. I thought about closing the curtain but didn't. I told myself I was over it. I woke to a sound, not the creak of the house or wind in the trees, as a deliberate sound. A light, precise tap on the window. My body went rigid. I glanced at the clock. It was 1:03 a.m. The tapping came again, steady as breathing. And then the whisper. "Miss, open the window." My pulse climbed into my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't even swallow. The voice was the same one I had heard in the dormitory. Small, polite, waiting. I forced myself upright, staring at the glass. But the reflection only showed my own outline in the dark. I whispered for my father, but no sound came out. I stumbled out of bed and ran down the hall. My parents were half asleep, startled by my sudden knock. When I told them someone was outside my window, my father grabbed a flashlight and went out back. The yard was empty, no prints in the dirt, no sign of anyone having climbed the tree. "Probably the wind," he said when he came back in. My mother touched my arm, told me to breathe. That was when my father looked at me and asked, "How did you know it was 1 o'clock?" "That's me." I didn't answer. I couldn't. After that night, I didn't return to teaching. I quit midterm and took a data entry job from home. A quiet life with no children's voices. No night duties. I moved into an apartment without windows in the bedroom. Every Halloween, I either check into a motel or stay awake until dawn with white noise humming in my ears. But still, sometimes, when the house is very still, I swear I hear it again. That faint, almost courteous whisper slipping through the dark. "Miss, open the window." And I never look. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I truly mean that. If you enjoyed these stories, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss the next ones. And once again, thank you for walking this dark road with me tonight.